Great. It's been a while, and I want to get to this right away. You had a very good interview very recently on Spin, and you talked about your feelings, your thoughts about what happened in the past. And although I hate to talk about it, I need to talk about this, and I just want to ask you off the bat, how is your relationship with the SBP?
I would say strained, over the last 6 months. But I think the whole point in me speaking out is that, that there has to be a coming together. And, if the fans weren't interested in me, there wouldn't be any need for me to speak. But, seemingly they have been. And I want to do my part to help for the World Cup. And so, I'm not antagonistic to the SBP. I've kind of left them alone to do their job, and they've left me alone to do my job. But I think because of the angst that's out there in the social media in particular, I think we all need to take steps to try and heal our basketball landscape. And I don't think I'm the main cog in that wheel, but I think that there's a part that I should play. And so I want to play that part. And there's no reason for me to be offside with the SBP or the personalities there. And there's no reason for them to be offside with me. So, let's put it back together and acknowledge the fact that we all want to succeed. And we want the Gilas basketball program to work. Well, so that's why I'm speaking out.
Well, when I listen to you and I hear these, this is really the way to move forward. I believe, the coming together, and of course the your offer to help once again the national team. But obviously there has to be closure to this issue, and before we can completely move forward, I think there has to be a phasing of all the things that has happened in the past. And I want to ask you about that, a little bit about that, Coach. You mentioned in your interview that part of the reason why you wanted to transfer the coaching position in the second window was the fact that it would be, in your own words, you said that it was going to be a challenge. There would be a major conflict in the assembling of a team. At that point, there was like losing some players. Players were gone, or at least they were leaving. And at the same time, you also mentioned the conflict on schedule between Ateneo and the national team and even the PBA. Didn't you know this, Coach, even before you accepted the job, that this was something that would happen? And, obviously people were wondering why it had to be a reason for your leaving?
I did know that there would be scheduling conflicts. I didn't know that player availability would always be as tough as it was going to be coming into that window. And I don't think I carefully planned my own conflict of interest between Ateneo and Gilas. I knew that it would exist, but you have to remember we were coming out of the pandemic. And the surety around the UAAP season didn't exist. We didn't know way back in 2021 that there was going to be a season 84, I guess it was, in February. When we knew that, that's when it became very acute that there was going to be, conflicts and then the player availability. The UAAP players wouldn't be available. The PBA players, obviously, en masse, wouldn't be available from all of the teams. But we knew that the PBA players would be available. We just didn't know how many or which ones. And then you had the issue surrounding the Gilas contracted players whose contracts were going to be ending and whether they were going to be renewed. So there was just a lot of doubt at that time. But I think more than anything involving player availability was the fact that I had a contract to be the Ateneo basketball coach and I had a contract to be the Gilas program director, and those two things were not in conflict. coming into the February window, trying to coach both teams was going to be in conflict. And then when it became reality that most of the players that would be available would be coming from the PBA and would be coming primarily from the MVP group of PBA teams, it just made sense to me. And that's why I had the discussion and the meeting with Boss MVP.
Yeah, right.
And I suggested that to him. This was not his suggestion. This was mine. And it was simply my solution to a sticky situation. And MVP thought it was a good idea.
All right.
And so that's how the meeting ended. He liked the idea, and he said, okay, let me talk to Chot, see if that's going to fly on that end of things. And that's how we left the meeting.
So you're saying, Coach, that when you had a discussion with MVP, Mr. Pangilinan, this was very amiable, they're very amicable. There was no arguments. You mentioned that subsequently there was a decision, or to this meeting, it was decided by the SBP for the sake of stability of in the program on many levels that they would make a change and appoint Chot for the long term. So was this a unilateral decision, or was this mutual? And did you accept this unilateral decision, if ever it was?
Well, if it was unilateral, you'd have to ask all the members of the SBP, I guess. It was not a decision that I was in favor of. I didn't want to leave the program. However, I did accept it because that's what you do when you're an employee. When the bosses sit in front of you and say,
right,
for these reasons, and they didn't just, dismiss me. They gave me their reasons. It's not up to me to like them or not.
Right.
They're the bosses.
Right.
They gave me their reasons, and I accepted their reasons.
All right.
And I understood them. I understood that they didn't want to chop and change the coaching position, which had been my stance on it. They wanted stability there. And in terms of the program director, as I said in the interview, they just didn't see that it made a lot of sense to have a coach like Chot, who is very capable of running a program. He's done it in the past. To have somebody like me sitting above him, making decisions that he would have to obviously go out and implement. They thought that Chot was capable of doing that. And for the sake of stability in the program, that was their decision. And so, yes, I accepted that. I decided to move forward. I still work for MVP as the coach of Ateneo. I also work for Ateneo University, of course. And that was my job. And, I was raised by my father to keep my mouth shut and do my job. So that's what I did. And, that's kind of brought us to here.
So, but you're moving out of Gilas did not mean that you could not work with Chot. Let's just clear that up.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And there were statements at the time that might happen, and I was okay with that. It hasn't happened. It didn't happen. And I'm okay with that.
All right. There have been talks about, the reason for, the program going awry is because of your sudden departure, and, you left the program, and Chot had to take over in the middle. Do you think that it was a mistake to just have left the program, and which affected the program negatively, or do you think that you left the program that was solid enough to have been carried by any coach?
The program was always going to be a difficult program heading into the World Cup. This year facing the SBP, facing Chot, if I was in that role, it wouldn't be any less difficult. It's going to be really tough, but it's a World Cup. It's supposed to be tough. And it's going to be tough for all the countries. I don't think that my departure from the program in any particular way has brought the program down. I think the timing of my meeting, as I said, with MVP was not good for the February window. I think I could have done that sooner. but I don't know how much sooner because, having to weigh up all the factors that were at play, that were in play heading into that window. I kind of just weighed all those up, and I made a decision when I got back from the States that this would be the best course for the program, thinking only that I was looking at the February window, that I wasn't looking at the next year and a half. So, the moment in time that happened and the impact from that moment, yeah, it's been hard on the program, but I didn't foresee that the decision that I made would cause these problems. I knew the February window would be tough, whoever coached it, but I was just in a conflicting situation where I was contracted to be the Ateneo coach,
Right.
and I was not contracted to be the Gilas coach.
Okay.
So I had to do my job, in my opinion. And Boss MVP said to me at the time, he said, "Well, are you going to be available to help?" And I said, "Boss, of course I will be available to help. So anytime I'm not working with Ateneo, I'm not at training, I'll be able to be with the Gilas team." Now, I didn't know when those practices would be. I didn't know how much that would be or would not be. But I knew that if I was not in direct conflict, then I'd be at the Gilas trainings in my role as the program director,
But
helping in any way that I could.
be frank with me, Coach Tab. Was the Ateneo job enough? And was the Gilas, stint something that you were just pitching in, or because a lot of people believe your stature deserves a national team coach. How what do you say to that? I mean, are you satisfied with just being in the college scene, or was it something that you were also looking forward to in terms of your helping? I'm not saying about taking over, but just helping the national team program.
Well, Noli, I was the program director. I didn't step aside from that role.
Right.
I thought that I would continue to be part of Gilas, and I took that job very seriously. I really believed that part of my role as the program director was to make sure that we had the best coach available for the World Cup. And I was thinking that we would be, potentially bringing foreign coaches in, that I would put myself in that role probably again when it fit the schedule. And then ultimately, if I was going to be decided to be the head coach, and it wasn't fully my decision, as has played out,
Right.
but if I was going to be in that role, then I probably would have to step back from the Ateneo role later in 2022. But at that point of 2022 in February, I wasn't thinking that way.
Right.
And so my thought was that, I'll be part of Gilas in some capacity heading into the World Cup in 2023. Decisions were made that I wasn't to be part of it. And the SBP had their reasons.
Right.
Let's not just throw stones at the SBP and say that, just for no reason at all, they decided that I wasn't the right guy. They had their reasons. And when you look at it on the surface, those reasons are reasonable.
Right.
Wanting stability, wanting to make sure that we didn't have conflicting situations, because the Philippine basketball landscape has a lot of conflict in it, by design almost.
Yeah. Well,
and working through that isn't always easy. And so that's what they were trying to do.